Welcome to the evening show. I'm your host, Captain Zach, and today's subreddit is r/ProRevenge. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. This story was called 14 People, including me, Walk Out in Protest. So, Friday the 13th happened. It was glorious for all intents and purposes. I run day-to-day operations for a decent-sized company. We have a president who runs the company in-house. He can be tedious, overwhelming, and an all-around butthole sometimes. Other times, he can be cool as can be. This was one of those times he was an overbearing, micromanaging buttbag. As shop foreman, I take my job seriously with morale. If my guys aren't happy, good product isn't produced. If good product isn't produced, customers aren't happy. Looking towards quality control, it doesn't help when guys are overworked, underpaid, and underappreciated. Friday was one of those days that started out well, but by 6:40 a.m., it had deteriorated to crap. Note, we officially don't even start work until 7. After the start, it was complained about this, micromanage that, several people being cussed at and belittled. Everyone just had enough. Once in our programming office, the idea was floated by someone that we should walk out. He can't fire us all. Now, we've all joked about this time after time, but it's never been more than a thought. We grit our teeth and bear it. That day, something was different. After getting yelled at again for something out of my control, I finally said, screw it. When someone asked if I was in and serious, I said yes. Then it snowballed from there. A total of 20 of us were supposed to walk out, but due to cold feet and a few defecating, only 14 made it. At 10 a.m., we made our move. I told everyone to wait until he would be distracted with the machine and we'd all clock out and leave. We all waited. When he was distracted, I gave the roundup signal and everyone left. A few stopped for a beer to relax. We weren't intending on going back to negotiate until Monday. We all met at a guy's house and discussed why we walked, what we wanted, and what our terms were. One thing was very clear. We all came back or no one did. After talking for 2.5 hours and coming to our terms, we decided to head back after a text from him. We were going to corner him, we were going to talk it straight, or we weren't working anymore. The talk lasted almost 2 hours, with both parties flexing their given muscles at some point. But one thing was made clear. Things were going to change, or we'd all go look for new jobs. After several people were being threatened with being fired and none being let go, we came to terms that benefited us. For once, our workplace had so much morale. People were excited to work again. We went back to work with purpose, agenda, and pride. This is the first Monday I've looked forward to work in a year. Even the guys who couldn't come, the people in the main office, we stirred the pot. We've made it known, we're not going to go through this anymore. I will vouch for any of my men, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. This story wasn't so much of a pro-revenge as a pro-example of what can happen if you work together with people. And that's pretty cool. Nice switch up. This story was called, Fire Me 'Cause I Was Sick. Have fun making minimum wage. This took place a couple years back, and one of my old coworkers said I should post it here. So this happened during the beginning of my senior year of high school. I was balancing out football, school, and work. I worked at a convenience store chain that's only been around my region of the country, the USA. I had an incompetent store manager. She was lazy, never wanted to do work, and all the store associates, including assistant manager, were always stuck cleaning up her mess. She took 2-hour lunches and always thought it was appropriate to leave her shift early. For some reason, and I'll never understand why, she did not like me. A good example was her writing me up for using my cell phone on the floor, when it was my mother calling me asking when to pick me up. I didn't have my license when this was going on. Or the time she gave me crap for not fully stocking the fridge. Now, she came in early in the morning and I would usually come in at the end of her shift because I had school and football practice. Then there was a night shift after me. She would come in the morning and see the fridge not fully stocked. This is just an example of how much of an idiot she really was. How she should be giving the night shift guys write-ups for that, but no, I was her main target. Now, I had gotten very sick one weekend and had to call into work that I couldn't come in that day. None of the managers or assistant managers were in, so the team lead took my message. Looking back at it, I should blame him more than my idiot manager. Anyway, I assume he never told the managers I was out because come the next week, I had a football game on Saturday. And I usually work Saturdays, and when I had gotten that job earlier that year, I gave her my football schedule so she wouldn't put me on for that day. My boss calls me Friday night telling me I need to come into work Saturday because I missed work the previous week, and no call, no show is automatic termination. I told her I did call in, but she didn't believe me, so instead of her telling me I was fired, I said I quit. right there on the phone. So I guess she didn't fire me, but I fired me. I don't know. Now to the revenge. I already had plans to get her fired or demoted. Either one would have made me happy. Over the course of the month prior to my departure, I had taken video and pictures of how bad she had that store running. By the time I had gotten to my shift, I had taken pictures of filthy floors and bathrooms, flies all around the food assembly area, associates on their phone, even the manager herself playing games or whatever right on the floor. Basically showing how she kept her store a wreck during her shift, and I was left to clean up the rest. I ended up sending this all the way up to our regional manager. My manager was banging the district manager, so if I had sent it to him, I would have gotten buried. Anyway, I got a response back saying that the situation would be handled accordingly. District manager ended up getting fired due to incompetence, and he was also under fire initially for harassment allegations from other store workers. My store manager got demoted all the way down to a basic store associate. The icing on the cake was that a year later, I was working at a warehouse that year after I graduated, making almost $20 an hour. There was another one of the convenience stores right down the road from my building. I ended up going there for lunch only to see my old boss getting reamed out by that store's manager. So, with the knowledge that I was making almost 3 times her hourly wage, store associates only make $8.35 an hour, also the fact that she was still incompetent at her job made me quite happy. We all know lousy management is, lousy, I guess. Let us know in the comments below if you have a really bad manager and why are they so bad. Here's a post from r/NuclearRevenge. It's called, "He Grabbed Me, I Took Everything." To start off, I want to clarify that I went way overboard, and at the time this story took place, I was at a bad spot in my life, but I do not regret what I did in any way. So about 4 years ago, I was working as a certified nurse's aide. I later lost my job for unrelated reasons and never went back into the field for other reasons. While I was there, I was one of 4 who would train new people. This is only relevant as the person this involves, who will be called John, was one of the guys I trained at our facility. John, for the most part, was easy to get along with, but had a temper, and everyone was aware of it. What I didn't know at the time was that he was also fighting for custody of his child. One day, about a year into him working there, he had messed up some charting. No big deal, I fixed it and corrected him on his mistake. He at first was confused, but I just explained that he might have gotten the charting numbers mixed up and it was no problem. Now, for reference, we did our charting paper style at the desk located between 2 of the halls, and occasionally, our patients would be sitting in front of it while chatting with us. As most of them were dementia care, they never really remembered what would be said, but regardless, we never talked about anyone by name, only room number or chart number. About an hour after this, I got done cleaning up from a resident shower and he came into the shower room and he asked to talk to me. Sure, that's fine, as it was a private area. He made mention that he didn't appreciate me correcting him in front of people. It made sense, so I apologized and told him it wouldn't happen again. I don't know where I went wrong, but he started getting loud about how it was his hall and no one had the right to talk to him like that. Now I'm angry. I told him that we don't have hall leads at our facility, nor does any nursing home I have ever seen, excluding maybe our nurses who are in charge. And 2, I have been here for years longer than him, and apparently nothing I said while training him stuck. This didn't sit well with him. He proceeded to pin me to the wall of the shower room with his arms across my throat, and his hand holding my shirt. As he held me there, he told me if I ever talked to him like that again, he was reporting me to the state for HIPAA violations. Now, HIPAA is not something I take lightly. One slip-up could cost you everything in this field with a HIPAA violation. I was red with anger. My thing is, I am double this guy's size and didn't want to lose my job for fighting with a coworker. The place was terrible, but I enjoyed helping the residents. So I started thinking and immediately had an idea. If there was one thing I knew, it was that the only thing worse for your license than a HIPAA violation was elder abuse. So I started my scheme. We had a man in our hall who had brain damage from football, and as such, he was highly combative and took 2 people to normally handle him. I was able to do him on my own generally, as I talked to him about football while taking care of him. I played defensive line in high school. That day, he had developed a bruise on his chest and I had no clue where it came from. But I had an idea of where I was gonna say it came from. I immediately called in John to help me transfer this resident to bed. As we got done and went into the hall, I said just loud enough for several CNAs and nurses to hear, stated, "I don't care why you did it. You never hit a patient." He was taken aback by this whole statement. It clicked after about 5 seconds what I just did to him. The nurses had me write a statement, in which I mentioned I had asked if he knew where that new bruise came from, and John told me that while he was walking the resident to the bathroom, he kept squeezing his arm so he hit him on the chest. Yes, the guy would squeeze arms and wrists while being walked. The next day I came in and found out that John had lost his job and police and adult protective services were pressing charges on him. I don't know if he was found guilty or not. I did find out a few weeks later, however, that he not only lost his license, he also completely lost custody of his child to his ex-wife and got no visitation. On top of that, he had to sell everything he owned in order to pay for his lawyer. Needless to say, I could have been a little bit more fair with him, but I loved watching his life burn down around him. Let it be learned. Don't grab or threaten people who can ruin your life with the drop of a hat. Oh boy, okay, that guy got obliterated. Do not assault your coworkers, but goodness, this guy really went for the nuclear in the NuclearRevenge. Alright, this last story was originally posted on ProRevenge, but then was posted again on NuclearRevenge, so it's a good little mix. Anyway, so this last story was called Catfish Thief After Having My Wallet and Cell Phone Stolen, Then Destroy Their Life. When I was in college, I had my wallet stolen. This is where my 6-month revenge story begins. At the beginning of the fall semester, I was working out in the college gym one morning and realized when I had returned that my wallet was not in the pants that I had left in my locker. Assuming that I had just left it in my dorm, I didn't think too much about it and went to lunch. When I got to the dining hall for lunch and sat down with some friends, I heard that some other people who had been to the gym recently were missing things, like watches, cell phones, wallets, etc. One of my best friends was missing his phone, and we realized we had been robbed. So we spent the rest of the meal complaining about gym security and just accepting our fate. I later learned that this sort of theft from the gym locker rooms had been going on for months. This is important later. Later in the evening, we were sitting around playing FIFA and tried calling my buddy's phone just to see what would happen. It rang. The idiot thief didn't turn off the phone, and we basically called him 100 times because we knew there was a limited amount of time to get in touch before the phone died. This was before Find My Phone was as widespread as it is today, so we were bummed when the thief never answered the phone. About to give up, I received a text on my phone reading, "What the F? Stop calling me." Perfect. I text back saying that I was trying to reach my buddy who had his phone stolen, and that I had recently lost my wallet as well. No response. I text back saying I don't really care about the cash or the wallet, but my ID was going to be a pain to replace because I'm from a state halfway across the country. The thief starts texting back, and to be honest, I was surprised by how empathetic he was being with me about getting robbed. I started sending friendlier and friendlier texts, saying things like, "You're actually a pretty cool guy, and I get why you would steal these things just laying around." When he apologized directly, I was like, "Forgive and forget, man. Don't worry about it." At this point, my only goal was to get my ID back. After texting for a while, I realized that the only way this guy would meet up with me is if he had something to gain. So I started asking, over text, if I could pay him for the stolen stuff. He wasn't very interested in that, probably because we didn't offer enough money. But eventually, the conversation led to drugs. Now, this was after like 10 days of texting back and forth, so it wasn't super abrupt because we had talked about parties, drinking, and smoking pot. We were essentially catfishing this guy to believe we were friends, so there is a lot of filler conversation I'm leaving out. The surprising part about his drug offer though was that he wanted to sell me acid, which was pretty hardcore based on the conversation so far. I'm not a narc, but the acid dealer / grand larceny combo made me realize this guy is making 100% of his income off of criminal activities. At this point, I think I might be in over my head, so I went to the campus public safety to see if they could help. Here was my pitch. I am in contact with the guy who has been stealing from students at the gym, and I am setting up a drug sting. I want your help. Their response was, "What the frick? You cannot do this." Fine, looks like we're going to have to go rogue. I leave campus safety and proceed setting up a drug deal, with the idea that we will pay him cash for the return of the stolen goods and some drugs. He has pretty specific instructions, because I think he realized he might stand to get his butt beat by showing up to a place full of people he had robbed. His instructions were for us to leave cash under a trash can in the middle of campus, and he would then throw away our stuff in the trash in a recognizable yellow bag. We were never supposed to see his face. I say, that plan sounds great, let's do it tomorrow. The next day comes and I skip all my classes. I called a friend who had grown up in the area and gone to a public high school near my college, and then called another friend with a dorm room overlooking the trash can where the deal was to go down. Then the stakeout began. We watched for like 3 hours while listening to stand-up comedy in the dorm room and screwing around. It was a fun reason to skip class. Finally, I get a text from the guy that warns me not to try anything funny because he was with a friend with a knife. Sure enough, we see a skinny white kid carrying a yellow bag approaching the trash can along with a short, squat guy in a big hoodie. I call the stolen cell phone and see the guy pick up. The next words I said were a total lie and probably risky to our overall plan, but ended up working out. Hey man, I called the cops and they're on the campus looking for a guy with a yellow bag. There's no cash under the trash can, but if I were you, I would ditch the bag and get out of there. He cussed me out, dropped the bag where he stood, and started running into the woods. What he didn't realize is that we were only like 30 feet away in a second-story dorm room, and my friend from the area recognized him from the relatively small high school they both attended. She was like, "Holy crap, it's Cletus!" Obviously, I'm using a fake name here, but honestly, Cletus is not that far off from the hillbilly name this dude actually had. We go down to collect the yellow bag and find my ID, credit cards, and friend's ID, and no drugs. The lack of drugs was kind of a relief when the next part of the story started going down. It's important to note that my friend's cell phone was not returned in the yellow bag, even though that was the original deal. So now I have what I need for real revenge. I skip campus safety this time and go straight to the actual police and tell them the whole story, minus the drugs part. I give them the returned stolen goods, the phone number, and some account information for the stolen phone, and the name of the thief. The stolen goods and the name were the only things they really needed to go find this guy, but the phone really sealed the deal for poor Cletus because they ended up finding it on him. I give my statement to the police, get my ID, and my friend gets his phone. All of this happened over a few weeks. We celebrate our victory and life goes on. 6 months later, I get a letter in the mail. It turned out that Cletus's home had a crap ton of drugs in it, and a crap ton more of the items reported stolen by students. A lot of the stuff stolen from my classmates was returned, and I was given notice that a restraining order had been filed on my behalf that was to keep Cletus 500 yards away from me. I wasn't too worried about keeping my distance though, because the letter also informed me that Cletus would be spending the next 36 months in prison for the crap they found in his home. I would be long graduated and out of Dodge by the time he was released. The final kicker was that I also received a check for just around $180 for the wallet and cash stolen from me that were never recovered, paid for by hours of labor from sweet, sweet Cletus. Okay, this is a very good example of redemption at the end of a story. Our hillbilly Cletus got what was coming to him. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.